In the golden heart of New York City, where skyscrapers kissed the clouds and billionaires dined under chandeliers worth more than most families earned in a lifetime, there existed a restaurant known only to the elite. It was the kind of place where the menus didn't show prices, because if you had to ask, you didn't belong there. Tonight, one of the most powerful men in the city occupied a long corner table, a billionaire named Richard Hollenberg. He had built his empire on steel, glass, and ruthless decisions, and he carried himself with the arrogance of a man who believed the world bent to his will. His suit was handmade in Italy, his watch a rare piece collectors would kill for, and his voice carried the kind of authority that made waiters bow their heads. Across the table sat a group of his colleagues, investors, and so-called friends. They were celebrating another acquisition, another company swallowed whole by Richard's empire. Expensive wine flowed freely, and laughter echoed against the restaurant's polished wooden walls. Richard enjoyed being the center of attention, but more than that, he enjoyed reminding others of their place, especially those he believed were beneath him. Among the staff that evening was a young black waitress named Amina. She was graceful, composed, and moved with quiet dignity through the candlelit room. To the guests, she was just another server, another nameless face in a uniform delivering plates of food. But beneath that apron, Amina carried a world of secrets. She had grown up far from the privilege of Richard's empire, yet she carried an intelligence and strength no one at that table could have imagined. When Amina approached with a tray of crystal glasses, Richard's sharp eyes followed her. He smirked, nudging the man beside him, and then, as if the idea had struck him like a mischievous spark, he leaned back in his chair and muttered something in fluent German. His words, coated with contempt, carried clearly across the table. These people will never be more than servants. They should be grateful just to clean our tables. The men around him chuckled uncomfortably, unsure whether to laugh or stay silent. For Richard, the moment was entertainment, a cruel sport he often played when the mood struck him. To his surprise, however, Amina paused mid-step. For a second, her eyes flickered, but her composure never wavered. She carefully set the glasses on the table, straightened, and looked directly at Richard. Then, in flawless, confident German, she replied, "It is dangerous to mock those you don't understand, because sometimes the servant speaks better than the master." The entire table froze. The laughter died instantly, replaced by stunned silence. Richard's smirk vanished, his eyes narrowing in disbelief. He blinked once, twice, as though his mind couldn't process what had just happened. A waitress, someone he considered invisible, had not only understood his insult, but had thrown it back at him with eloquence that cut sharper than any blade. The room seemed to grow quieter, the clinking of cutlery and distant conversations fading into the background as all eyes turned to the confrontation. One of Richard's companions shifted nervously in his seat. Another cleared his throat, but no one dared speak. Amina stood tall, her face calm, her voice steady. Switching effortlessly to English, she continued, "My mother was German. She taught me her language before I could even write my own name. And she also taught me something else, that true wealth is not measured by money, but by respect. Something you clearly don't understand." Richard's face flushed red, anger and embarrassment battling for dominance. For the first time in years, someone had stripped away his armor of power in front of his peers. He opened his mouth, ready to fire back, but no words came. His arrogance had collided with truth, and truth had won. Amina didn't linger for applause or recognition. She simply gathered her tray, gave a polite nod, and walked away with the same quiet dignity she had entered with. But her words lingered at that table like a ghost, haunting Richard with every passing second. His colleagues looked at him differently now, not with admiration, but with thinly veiled judgment. They had witnessed a titan humbled by someone he had dismissed as insignificant. The evening carried on awkwardly. Richard tried to regain control of the conversation, but the energy had shifted. His jokes fell flat, his boasts sounded hollow. He excused himself early, leaving behind a table that buzzed not with celebration, but with whispered recollections of what they had just seen. Later that night, as he sat alone in the backseat of his limousine, Richard replayed the moment over and over. The words burned in his mind, "The servant speaks better than the master." For the first time in a long while, he felt something he had almost forgotten: shame. Amina, on the other hand, returned home to her small apartment with a quiet smile. She had not spoken up to humiliate Richard or to prove herself. She had spoken because dignity demanded it. She knew men like him ruled the world with money and arrogance. But she also knew something they never could: that knowledge, respect, and courage were currencies more powerful than gold. The story of that night spread quietly through circles of power. Some dismissed it as gossip, others as exaggeration. But those who had been at the table never forgot. They had seen a billionaire mocked, and a waitress rise above him with nothing more than truth and a steady voice. And somewhere deep inside, even Richard knew that in that brief moment, all his billions had meant nothing.